'Cause I am searching, don't need to look outside myself to know that I am whole. And I've been learning, made it through the darkest storms, and I'm coming to my own. And I am worthy of love. I can learn to love myself just because.
Oh, was I singing along to my own song? My bad. Okay.
I think you were.
Welcome back, everybody, and happy Monday. My name is Emma G.
I'm Dinah Simpson.
Yay! And you are here with Real Talk Podcast with your hosts, because every Monday we like to kick off the week with some real talk.
Yes.
High key living.
High key living.
What is high key living, Dinah?
It is everything, all things high vibration, right? So
yes,
bring that high vibe to your life.
The high vibe, the high energy. I love it. And if you missed last week's episode,
oh my gosh,
Douglas Bird and Laurent Amzalag, they brought the high energy.
Yeah, so much energy.
So much vibration.
Great.
And tonight's guest, he's like a different kind of energy. It's more, I don't know, he's inspirational, he's motivating, he is, an engagement and awareness person, he is an educator, a coordinator. He has some pretty intense stories to tell us, and I'm so excited. Joey Weisler, how are you, my love?
Wonderful to be here. I'm bebopping away to your theme song. Very catchy. Very well done.
We like to bebop around here.
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
Thanks so much for being here, Joey. I'm so
Thank you to
excited.
Emma G and Dinah for having me. Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'm super excited to get into this conversation because, it's really hard. I think you and I are quite aligned, and actually Dinah as well, to be fair, in the way that it's really hard to pigeonhole what it is exactly you do, because you do so much and you represent and show up for so much. Can you give us an overview about who Joey Weisler is and what brings you to life? What lights you on fire?
Thank you so much for asking. So I am an educator first and foremost, and I will introduce myself to you and your audiences the same way I would to my students on the first day of class. And normally when I introduce myself this way, the students are initially like, oh my God, why did I sign up for this? But it's like, it's okay. Let me just talk you through this and we'll take it from there. So I'm Dr. Joey Weisler, and my PhD is in English, but the background research area is trauma and trauma studies and trauma learning and burnout as well. And like most researchers, the research that I do is very personal to my own connection. I'm talking to you tonight from South Florida, but more particularly, it's my home in Parkland, Florida, which is less than a mile away from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And that is also my alma mater. For our listeners that are tuning in, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School was the site of one of America's worst mass shootings after Columbine and Sandy Hook. And this event took place in 2018. The 8th remembrance is coming up next month on Valentine's Day. And on that day, there were 17 people that were killed, 17 others that were wounded, and a whole community, including myself, that were witnesses to that event and carried it in many different ways. And on that day, I was substitute teaching right next door at their feeder middle school, my former middle school as well, where I'm sitting in on that day as a daily substitute teacher, a 6th grade math classroom, with who I would find out later were the children of, the siblings of, the best friends of people who were in that building. That was the site of the massacre. And that building where the massacre had happened was where I had most of my classes when I was a student at Stoneman Douglas. So it was very easy to think about just like the layout of the building and like the whole timeline of the event, but yet still to this day, unfathomable to wrap my head around what had really happened at that site. So I began my first ever teaching experience that coming fall 2018, back in that same middle school. As a matter of fact, in the same classroom that I was substituting in as a daily sub on February 13th, which I would coin to be like almost like the last normal day I have had as a pre-service educator. That was in August. The event was 6 months before in February, but right in between, like literally to the day, that 90-day mark on May 13th, one of my closest friends died by suicide. And I mention that because this was a person who every time the system would say to me, and by the system I mean my mentors and friends and whatnot, would tell me as a student that my childhood dream could not be fulfilled. And believe it or not, I do tell future teachers this all the time, like, I don't think you should do this. So I'm just as guilty as my own mentors were. But this person was someone who, like me, had so much innocence and would always say, yeah, yeah, you can do it. You'll be the best teacher that they've ever had. And he always advocated for my success. And I had always guilted myself, even to this day, for missing the signs when maybe I could have. And he was so invested into my own well-being. So those two events in combination really perpetuated me to be an educator who was really into social and emotional grounding. First of all, I'm not trying to victimize myself in any way, but I will say that because of that tragedy, the shooting, and losing my best friend, I had a very non-traditional first year teaching experience where the first year in the classroom is always rough, but in a way I almost felt like the experience of actually being a first year teacher was robbed from me because of those experiences where I had already felt a sense of just there was something that had already made me fall into survival mode is the best way to put it. I entered the classroom already in survival mode. I never really got to enjoy the fantasy that we all carry, like the honeymoon of, oh, a new job, new career, yay. Didn't have that. I was already surviving by day one, if not before. So by the end of my first year, I taught in Parkland for about 6 months as an interim position for a teacher out of maternity leave. And that alone was, this isn't going to be the right word, but it was fascinating to just experience this territory and the aftermath of the tragedy, just to see how resilience all came together. That was a major learning curve. And those were still to this day some of my favorite students of all time. And when I moved next door into the city over, we're talking about 15, 20, 25 miles away, but still the same school district. I moved over there for a full-time position. Now, a year later, January 2019, the tragedy had taken place now 11 months before. And I noticed that the climate there was a lot less supportive, a lot more guarded in terms of just understanding what had happened with that tragedy. Like if I saw something, I said something, and I would always be asked why. And how could you talk about our students like this? In terms of, I had students in my classes that I saw to be threatening. I had a student that one peer made a joke and said, that guy's going to be a future shooter one day. And I went downstairs and I said something. And the response I got was, how could you? Where's your evidence? You can't say things like that. Well, my evidence is that I'd seen this as a witness to my own city. So there you have it. And eventually it turned out that it didn't work. It just didn't work out. And I think that I would admit when my first year mentor said to me at one point that she thought I was really trying to push social and emotional learning in a way that was compensating for the emotions I had with my friend's loss. She could be correct, but it wasn't working out in terms of those students still had to meet standards, right? They still had to go on their benchmarks and their exam prep stuff and do that on a daily basis. And it really put me in this complex of how do you balance emotions with academics, especially as Emma G would know this as a music educator, as somebody in the humanities space, where do you draw that fine line where emotions and academics can be separate, but still both be introduced? And as a first year teacher, I think I really struggled with that and it didn't work out and I left. And to me, that was at one point in my life, my dream job, to be that 8th grade middle school teacher to 150 minds every year for 10 months. And it gutted me when I walked away from that. But I had to, because during it, I was just suffering from all different types of anxieties. My stomach was hurting. I was crying all the time. I just looked lost and petrified every time I walked through that building. Like I looked as if I had no idea what was ever going on because I was just so scared all the time. So my nervous system was always aroused. And by the time I left, I mean, Dinah said that she read a little bit of my dissertation. I appreciate that. Here's a hard copy of it. And producing a 300-page dissertation was like nothing after that first year experience. And I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So that's Dr. Joey Weisler in a nutshell.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. What, all of the stories that almost like a library in your mind, was there a pivotal moment where you felt like, okay, this story or these stories need to be told? And how did you decide that you wanted to turn this into something that could provide healing for like people like you, an educator or students? I'm just curious about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my favorite one since you asked. Thank you for that. So I was just on a call for my own podcast, The Class of Narratives, with a very good friend of mine, Dr. Adam Wolstorff, who actually is the author of Navigating Trauma in the English Space, Navigating Trauma in the English Classroom. And his new book is called Teaching Through the Riptide. And the riptide is this analogy to just like a surfer who gets caught up in these moments of what's going on. And the riptide in our classrooms as educators is the same thing, where we're constantly experiencing these moments, hopefully not too often, but every now and again, I think I've had more than a few in one sitting. These moments where you look around and you're like, what is going on in my classroom right now? And you have to make a decision if you control that situation or not. So I mentioned that because the moment that happened to me was actually more of what we call to be a constructive or a positive shift versus one that is negative and completely derails everything. I had a couple of those, but I'm not going to tell those types of stories here. The one that happened to me was the positive shift. And in this moment, I was teaching one of my favorite books of all time. For our audiences listening, it was called Of Mice and Men, John Steinbeck, very popular 1930s, Great Depression. I was going to say 1800s. That's why I had to think about that. It wasn't the 1800s. It was in the early 1900s, Great Depression. Yeah. And it's a story about these American migrants, if you will, but they struggle with being an outsider. You have people of all different walks of life that feel so isolated, yet they need to find their ground to connect. And I've admitted it more than a couple times, that the lesson that I found was often teachers pay teachers. And I say that almost as insurance, that other people had used it before. However, what went with them was fine. But for me, it went in a very unexpected way. So I brought this lesson into class, 8th grade students. It's September 2019. So towards the beginning of the school year, but not exactly, almost like the turn into the second quarter. And these students had known each other since they were in kindergarten. At this charter school that they were at, we call them charter starters, where they had all been together for 8 years of their lives. They'll graduate together. Most of them, they're from the class of 2023. They're still good friends. But this moment was an interesting observation, to say in the least. So I brought in this assignment where it says, just very plain and simple, have the students journal about a time where they have felt like that they have been an outsider or have been isolated, and that's it. It seemed so easy. And as somebody who at that time was already into the whole, not to make it sound tacky, but the whole social and emotional learning of things, I was like, what a great approach. Let's do it. And we did it. And you should know that my classes at that time were already seated in like this circle or this horseshoe. So it was already really easy for everybody to just kind of kumbaya at any time that they wanted. So they do this writing exercise. And as they're writing, they are just experiencing a lot of emotions. Like, I'll never forget how this one student is like tearing up. And I walk by his desk and I'm just like, you good? Everything okay over here? And he looks at me and he's like, with tears in his eyes, he says, this is what happens when I think about my childhood. I'm just like, okay, all right, well, good for you. Keep writing. Okay, next. And I just keep walking around the room, and just like all these different emotions are popping up in students left and right. So at the end, because I'm into social and emotional learning, but I have never seen myself open up Pandora's box in the way that I was about to. What I did is that I said to the students, all right, writing time's over. Pass them up and I will give you the stamp of completion, and onward we go. But all of a sudden the student's like, oh, wait, Mr. Weisler. I was still Mr. Weisler back then. Now I'm Dr. Weisler. They said, Mr. Weisler, we want to read our entries to you. And I'm like,
oh, wow.
Why? But okay, just give it a try. Let's see where this goes. So the first student raises their hand and they talk about how they're suicidal. The second person raises their hand and they talk about how they just cry themselves to sleep at night, that they put on this happy facade all the time in school, and then they go home and cry themselves to sleep. This person raises their hand and says, I'm struggling with sexuality. This person raises their hand and says, I have this. Then students are coming up and they're hugging each other like, I feel you. I'm struggling with that same thing too. So they're already starting to kumbaya. I could have stopped it there, but I didn't. At that point, I'm like, this is interesting. It was to my 6th period class already at the end of the day. And I asked them, I said, how many of you were easily able to come up with a time in your lives where you easily felt like an outsider, or that you were isolated from a group? Again, I need to emphasize, these students were charter starters. They had known each other for 8 years. In a room of 27 students, with no reservation or hesitation, when I asked that question, every hand in the room went up. And I had full attendance that day. I counted 27 hands. And it gave me this complex as to, what does it mean when we are all feeling like misfits in a room full of misfits? When 27 people feel like outsiders, what does that mean for all of us? What are we doing differently? And that's when they turned to me and they said, now that we've told you this, how are you going to fix it? They put the onus back on me. They said, this was your assignment. How are you going to fix it and speak up for us? That was my out. That's why I did not make it past the end of my probationary, because I was just talking about this on another show where I had many, many wonderful human beings as colleagues, truly advocates for education. But there were a few who came to work to cause problems. And I think those are the colleagues that really perpetuated whatever trauma my students were feeling and how they carry that in between classrooms. And after that moment, when I really started to push, I mean, I'm talking like I'm in the principal's office saying, do something. He's like, no, as I'm really trying to advocate for these students. Now I'm the problem child because I'm going, they literally said to me, shut up, you're going against the grain. And that was my moment that really pushed me into the work that I do, because I realized that students deserve better and they don't always have that.
I literally have a song about pushing against the grain. I feel like you're talking directly to me and my people.
Definitely.
Joey, obviously I've been working in the social emotional learning space for years here in the States, but back in New Zealand where I'm from, that's just called education. In Tikanga Māori, it's in Pacifica education, when you work in an environment where Pacifica learning is part of the education system in partnership with Western teaching pedagogies. I feel like there's a whole different approach. And so it was such a mind fart for me moving to the States and recognizing that doesn't necessarily happen here in certain states specifically, right? And I think, to this new program that you have, your heart, framework that you do, a lot of what how I think you've done things is you've kind of integrated Western teaching with trauma-informed learning and recognizing that, oh heck, students as young as 12, 11, 8 are going through stuff. I had a student the other day, a 5th grader, who he was, I never told you about this actually, he had been shipped from Texas to the DC Montgomery County area because his parents used to beat him and starve him. And how do you teach a kid that like that with that experience if you don't first honor and recognize their history? So with that in mind, I really just honor the work that you're doing. It's so beautiful, especially when you can use artistry, English, songwriting as a way to help empower these kids and help them search for the answers inside themselves. But can you tell us a little bit more about the Heart Framework and how you're using that to help young people elevate and take a little more will feel a little more in control of who they're becoming,
Mhm.
you know, in
Thank
their
you so much.
education.
Thank you for asking. And I'll be honest, the heart framework, as natural as it connects back to what I do now, it was not a direct, like, come into the mind sort of thing. It was more of like an experience that I had to think through and talk out. And it was actually with my own mentor, Leslie Moffat, where I sat down with her and we spoke about it. And she's like, sounds like what you're doing is this, this, and this. I'm like, you're right. And the heart method looks like this. So after that experience terminated, I moved instantly. I'm talking like 4 days later. I left the school in December, and by the end of that term into January, I was already teaching at the college level, and I had been at the college and university level ever since. And there's a difference here because there is a lot more flexibility and creative freedom that goes into what we teach and how we do it. So I'm like, okay, what a great space to experiment with these procedures and these different prompts that really get students to be a part of the work that they produced. So I want to tell you a little bit real quick about the project that the heart method goes really well with. It's a project that I do called Your Voice, Your Change, which in a sentence asks the students to, it's literally composition 101. And I just had a lot of student feedback like, this is a lot to add. This is a tall order to ask for students in Comp 101. I'm like, but you did it, so good for you. In Comp 101, I ask the students to go out into the world, however that looks for them, and become a part of the change that they want to create. And they write about that for 16 weeks. It's 4 papers, divvied up 1 paper a month, paper 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 weeks apart. And they just have to write about that change and act on it as well. Do they want to make a petition? Do they want to make a blog? Do they want to write a letter to a senator? Do they want to make a documentary? Do they want to campaign through social media? And the topics are so variegated. I had one school last semester where there was a lot of marine biologists. They had a great marine science program at this one school. So a lot of them were focused on eco-pollution and things like that. I had a student 2 years ago make a gluten-free cookbook because she was really into healthy eating. I had another student interview her boyfriend on alcoholism and recovery and what that looks like as well. And we look at that project side by side with many different texts in the course that have to do with people telling their stories. It could be something like The Help, which is a wonderful civil rights-based story by Catherine Stockett. It could be it could be The Giver. Yep. It could be The Giver by Lewis Lowry, which is a great fiction piece, but really talks about how we break through barriers and really make change happen. The course gets really dark. We talk about Elie Wiesel's Holocaust memoir, Nights, and pair that up with Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List. And Emma, you would love this too. When I introduced the project, I bookend it in a very tacky way with Wicked. By when I introduced the rubric, we play Defying Gravity. And on the last day of class, when they're presenting all their work, my closing spiel, if you will, is talking about how language changes us for good. And that's our closing piece, because every day in the semester, there's music in some way that pairs up with what we're doing. So the heart framework, how does the heart framework connect? The heart framework connects because in this class, which again is Composition 101, there are hundreds of sections of Comp 101 that are offered in universities on a term-by-term basis. So lucky for my students, either they feel like they've won the lottery or they're having existential dread for signing up for this class. And most of the time, they're just here because that Monday from 5 to 6:30 slot worked really well for them. It's the only time they could fit their schedule. They didn't want to do my project, but the time slot fit well. So lucky for them. And what this stands for is that it talks about our habits. The habits as in, I come into the first day and I tell my students that this class is based on flexibility and is based on choice. I have my syllabus. This is exactly what we're going to be covering every single day. But how we go about that is entirely up to you. Almost like coming into this podcast, right? We had a bit of an agenda, but you said to me, however you want to take this is on you. And that's what I tell my students. Here's my agenda, but you tell me where the conversation should go based upon what you've read, what you know, what you're thinking about. I'm open. I'm learning from you. That's our habits, just creating that flexible structure. The E stands for engagement. And like I said, even from middle school to college, my classroom is always set up in a space where everybody can see each other. They can look at each other. They can validate each other. And it's a way to create a sense of community. And you're not staring at the back of somebody's neck. while they're talking and sharing ideas. So when they are in that circle-like setup, the engagement factor is about what we call to be invitational language, where students are then invited to speak and contribute. And I set the course up that way because I'm not really concerned with how people are doing the reading or engaged with the writing. I'm just more in tune with how they can facilitate that back to the rest of their peers and engage in a real conversation with them. So the engagement piece is really just about having invitations to speak. And for those who do share ideas, I tell them you don't have to go away and do the mini low stakes writing assignment that weekend. You can either talk in class and be a part of the community, or you can listen, but you'll have to do the writing assignment later. But they have choice. They have choice in how they want to engage. The A factor stands for awareness. So HEART, HEA, habits, engagement, awareness. Awareness stands for when they start to become involved in their projects. It's like when I had that student, I had a great student actually focus on censorship, which is ironic because we were in Florida. And there's a whole political thing to that. But when she was looking at this project, she was like, she all of a sudden became so much more attuned into what it really meant and what it meant to the people around her. So people really get the sense of awakening when going forward with this project. Mind you, there are a lot of students, like I said, that would prefer to walk into a Comp 101 class in their freshman year and say, Professor, give me the topic, I'll write it out for you, you'll give me an A, and we'll call it a day. I'll go along with our lives. But I'm just not like that. So I'm like, what do you want to write about? And sometimes like, I don't know, what do I want to write about? And like, well, you got to figure this out because that's going to help you get through the program. So the A factor, the awareness factor, is the element that really pushes and propels students to get into that domain, to really care about what they see, what lights up their world, and why it matters to them. Which leads me to the R, that resiliency factor. It's like once they start to become awake to the world around them, what do they do about it? And then the T in HEART is telling our stories. A lot of students are now able to connect their own personal stories to these projects in some way. Because I tell them, when you choose your task, you got to have a Y factor. This book exists. This is my dissertation. It only exists because of all those moments and those events that I mentioned at the beginning of our podcast. Without those Y factors, I'd have no story to tell. So those all exist because of those moments. And I tell my students the same. Choose a project because you have a story to tell behind it. And that's my HEART framework.
I love this. And as a mom, I have kids. And I wish
your mom has kids.
I'm a mom who has 3 kids. And if they had teachers like you, first, like, thank you for advocating. It's so important. I'm glad that you're the rabble rouser in the room because it's really important to have, that presence. Also, the experience that you're teaching, great. Like they can come into the classroom and just do exactly what you have said. But I think the critical thinking that you're adding to their, their thought process, working through the emotions, I just think it's invaluable. So thank you so much for what you're doing. And yet again, another guest where I'm like, I can listen over, like I can ask so many questions, but I know we're running out of time. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and for the compassion that you're holding for so many kids and the stories that you are encouraging them to tell and share with others. I think it's just a wonderful gift that you're sharing with the world. And to close this, I do have one question.
Yes.
Okay. If you had a megaphone that could reach everyone in this world.
Oh, that's a big megaphone. Okay.
It's a huge megaphone.
It's called social media.
Yes. Yes. It is. But everybody has to hear it.
Okay.
Okay.
It's tall order. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What would you like to share with the world?
I will share what I tell my own students on the last day of every semester, and that's let language allow you. The whole experience of using language, spoken, written, etc., the whole experience of using language to help you do good and be good, to be a good human and to do good for others. And when you are in a classroom setting, for our students listening, I always tell them, and I actually put this in the Western Wall in 2017, before I was a pre-service teacher as a note to future students, I said to them, allow the classroom, allow your education to be a place where you discover self-love, the self-value, the self-worth for yourself, form human connections with others, and just know that learning is a lifelong process that will never, ever stop. Because the day you stop learning is the day you stop growing. So let the classroom serve you in all those ways, not just one.
Oh my goodness.
I
Thank
love
you
that.
for sharing that. And when are you coming back?
On invitation.
You have a lot more to share with us. So
That's awesome.
I hope that our listeners gained a lot of insight.
And of course, if they didn't, they can learn
yes.
some more. All of Joey's details are in the liner notes here.
Yes.
You can also stalk him and read his dissertation.
Yes, please do. I would love that.
This is so good.
But no,
Go to his
honestly,
website.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Joey, thank you. This was a fantastic conversation.
Yeah.
We really
Likewise.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for inviting me. Thank you for tuning in.
Of course,
Be
yeah.
well.
Okay, have a great day, guys. To everybody listening,
Yeah.
be good, be kind, spread love like it's going out of fashion,
Yeah.
and abide by Joey's words. Dr. Joey Weisler, everybody. Use your words in purpose and on purpose.
With heart.
Yes. See you next
With
week.
heart.
Oh, he's so great.
Cause I am searching, don't need to look outside myself to know that I am whole. And I've been learning, made it through the darkest storms, and I'm coming to my own. And I am worthy of love. I can learn to love myself just because.